So welcome to Pax Europiana, this time from Durres. The sunset talks continued. It's no sunset today because it's a bit cloudy and I think tomorrow it might be raining. But still it's beautiful, and I will use this opportunity to talk about the whole issues of the Southeastern European countries, Eastern European countries, these 12 countries in between Russia, Turkey and the West, NATO and the EU, and what to do about them, because there is some considerable confusion here, and I would like to address it and make very clear what is the perspective of our enemies. Enemy is a big word in relation to Russia, but I think it's true. And it's a maybe too big word in relation to Serbia, because it's a bit more complicated, our relation. But these are the core countries of the former Soviet Union and Yugoslavia. And we should have no illusion. And the elites, which are in my age and above, I'm 52, 53 this summer, but the people who run Yugoslavia and who have run Yugoslavia and who run the Soviet Union, of course, you know, it's well documented. Putin is now in his end of his 60s, and so he was 35 when everything broke down, so 30 years ago. So ultimately, it's that generation which were already in advanced positions in 1990, when I was still 20. So it's, of course, you know, I was basically the last generation of the people in Austria, in a neutral country, but still trained for the Cold War as an officer. I was trained for that, I have talked about it already. The people older than me, and they are still alive, obviously, you know, many of them, obviously, and they run the institutions. Putin's generation, they were 35 then, They are in this age difference 15 years plus, 10, 15 years plus than me, or a generation above. So they were already the kind of establishment. But even when you are younger, my generation still was trained for the big attack, or for running the foreign policy, or for basically keeping Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union alive. In the case of Yugoslavia, it's still to be remembered that we are talking that Yugoslavia, basically in the form of a Serbian state, but still bent for war, was surviving until the 5th of October 2000. So people were a decade longer in power, and they are still there. You know, people have not gone away. There's no magic kind of disappearance of elites, especially in the case of Russia, where since 2000 Russia is run by the same elite. They have basically won the power struggle between 98 and 2000. They came to power again, and it's the same guys. Maybe it's some of their family members, not exactly the same person, but many of them. The elite has not changed so much in these two core countries of the Soviet Union and of Yugoslavia. So what I want to say with this one, it's a bit of an introduction to what I will explain now, that our policy towards Southeastern Europe and to Eastern Europe has to be adopted. We don't have the right strategy in Brussels today, and we have also a problem with our top personnel because they don't see the world like that. If you go then, like Sebastian Kurz in Austria or Charles Michel, relative young politician as well, to the top of the European level, you have to be very successful inside Austria. You know some of foreign policy, obviously, but you are less interested, you know, in all these questions in the East, which are a headache, complicated, and, you know, difficult to understand. And of course you are interested in the big issues like Russia and Serbia, because it's a big countries. They of course take a lot of attention, and they are very problematic and very important. So you learn less about all the other countries. And it is a question also of training of the capacities of our elite to be capable to understand what is the reasonable approach. And also because, you know, when you train a politician, it takes decades. It takes a long time normally, okay? In some cases it goes very fast and to learn on the job. But the thing is that the understanding for the whole area in between is, of course, a bit, you know, you need to know about America, you need to know about your own country to even be close to power. And then you have a serious problem to know the politics of Armenia, Kosovo, you know, Azerbaijan and all this. So it's good and somehow a nice approach to put them one in the Eastern Partnership Program and the others in the term Balkans. And then somehow you have a box for both and they are part of that. And, you know, let's come back later and who cares? Here's the problem. I will explain now in great details what is the problem, because the elites in Belgrade and in Moscow very much care for Eastern Europe. In the case of Russia, obviously for them Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova are really extremely important. They care very much and they know very much the actors, the players, the economy, the reason, the history, everything, because they get trained like this, and that's really very important for them. It matters very much. And the same is in Belgrade. They really very much know Bosnian history or Kosovo history from their perspective. And for them it's really very important. For the elites in Brussels and in Vienna, much less. So we have a problem of attention, of information, of care. And then obviously this important third phase of enlargement, if you want to take it like the 95 enlargement, and then this whole enlargement from 2004 to 2013, where most of Eastern Europe, or actually only half of Eastern Europe, came to the European Union and to NATO. We have now this third and more complicated phase, with also countries which have been the core part of the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, but also which the underlying elite of Russia and of Serbia has a very specific interest in. And here I come to my claim where I want to explain it, that we have to understand Serbia better and Russia better. Russia, we always are shocked when Putin says that Ukraine is not a country and he doesn't accept the sovereignty of Ukraine, but we should take him very seriously and understand exactly what he says, because only then we can counter successfully his approaches, and we can also help our Ukrainian friends much more if we understand it. Same is true with Kosovo, Bosnia and with Montenegro. I explained it in concrete terms, not to be too general. Now open Balkans, for example, last week. Why is it perfectly fine for Serbia to have a relation with Macedonia and with Albania? Because obviously they have come to terms that they tried, obviously they conquered Macedonia in 1912 and Albania as well, mostly north of Albania, central Albania until Durrës. But they understand now realistically with all the things that happen that their power projection possibility is not so big that they can really somehow conquer Albania and Macedonia. They are now independent country. Their claim to fame here is to cooperate, obviously, and to have open transit and economic ties. It's a very similar calculation of the Belgrade elites like with Slovenia. There was a 10-day war 30 years ago, and then they understood, there is no Serbs living, there is no basis for us to project power, it's far away, it's complicated to reach. Let's make war in Croatia and in Bosnia, not in Slovenia, because we have really no case here. And the same, then they withdrew and Slovenia became independent. Croatia was then toppled in major wars in the east and in the Krajina region. It's on now today the 5th of August. I will talk about that one as well in more details in this video. So here we come. Slovenia was gone, they had no case, they left it. And so the same rational principle applies to a cooperation between states in the case of Macedonia and Albania. A completely different approach is there by the elite, which is now in power again since 2013-14, Vučić victory, and is from the Serbian side. We have to understand our opponents in a sense and their thinking, which is based in the greater Serbian ideology. And they have absolutely no understanding or no kind of acceptance. Of course, legally they have accepted Bosnia as a state, Montenegro as a state, Kosovo not. So there is, of course, that's a legal reality. They understand that one, the situation of international law. But mentality-wise, obviously Montenegro for them is like not a small brother, but a mistake. Bosnia independence is a mistake in the current form. And they will never mentally and wholeheartedly accept it and embrace this way. And that we allowed an open Balkan to happen, we, as I say, as US and the EU and even people going to the conference, is of course, that is the endorsement. Because you really don't need, from the Serbian perspective, from the greater Serbian elite perspective, from that thinking, you really don't need Bosnia and Montenegro and Kosovo at such conferences. They can be invited as observers, can participate as well, but they are not fully sovereign and independent countries on the same level as Serbia, in their view. This has to be understood. And they are, of course, legally, yes, they will always make the nice statements because they also know the realities, not with Kosovo, obviously, and they have no intention ever to recognize it. Let's be very clear. That's also very clear from their view. But Bosnia, they have now more or less 200 years of independence struggle in the case of Serbia, and they have got it, they have achieved it, and they from the start wanted to have Herzegovina and the Krajina, that's the Republika Srpska, that's basically the Krajina in the north, the Herzegovina in the south. And this is, it was the Herzegovina uprising which led to the Great Eastern Crisis. More I don't have to explain. Yeah? To anybody in the 19th century history is firm, but that was the big war in this region in 1875 to 1878, which was settled with the Berlin Congress. Congress, the outcome they've never accepted. Yeah? Okay, we can discuss about all these issues as well, but I just say the fact is that this kind of independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina as a state, and then now what of course the majority of Bosnians want to join NATO, because the majority is 60%, maybe 65%, yeah, is basically pro-Western people from the Muslim, from the Bosniak or from the Croatian majority. And even some others might, from the Serbian minority, might also be in favor. But the country is blocked because of the way there was peace made in the 1990s. Yeah? And very much benefiting the Serbian minority because they have now a veto on the future of the country via the Republika Srpska veto in the state presidency. So here we come. It's important to understand that there is no real interest in a real harmony on the side of the Serbian elite, and there won't be. They have made their peace with Macedonia and with Albania, fine, but with the other three countries, certainly not. And it's very similar to Russia's relation with Ukraine, to Georgia and Moldova. And we just see the rollback after the 19th of April settlement which Charles Michel has negotiated with the help of Danielson, that's the negotiator who did also the Macedonian peace, that was very good. But the Georgian rollback basically has started 1 week after Michel was there to sign the accession trio situation of Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova. 1 week later, Russia, via its agents in the Georgian Dream, has withdrawn the carpet from that agreement and has ended it completely, basically, by the Georgian Dream no longer participating. And then Georgia is basically a rollback territory. I would like to explain as well how it is in the so-called, we call it Eastern Partnership. I have made many articles now to have a change of strategy, but I was not successful. The Eastern Partnership countries, the pro-European, should be treated like Bosnia, Kosovo and Montenegro and helped to Euroize, to have a currency back, to be EU potential candidate countries and to be in the structures of Southeastern European integration. Moldova is already, and with Moldova we have success. Now is the new government formed, it's pro-European, and it should be EU potential candidate and Euroized, logically, like Montenegro, in the same way like Bosnia, like Kosovo. That was very good policies. Yeah? And integrated, it is already in the Regional Cooperation Council, and the same should happen with Ukraine, Georgia, and these countries, and also Azerbaijan and Armenia, by the way. I want to explain also the South Caucasus. It's quite simple. Georgia is really very important. It's a northern country with a border for Russia. Let's explain. Georgians have also played a big role in the history of Russia, with Stalin as the best or worst example. Worst, obviously, from my view. But in the role of the Soviet Union, the Georgians play a big historical contribution. There's no doubt about that in many aspects. Yeah? Same as Ukraine. And same as Moldova. If you go there in Moldova, I was several times, you go and ask who is the big landowners, it's often people who live in Moscow. And to this day, so is the situation there. And the Bessarabia, if you use that term and you know history, has played a huge role in the Russian history. It's the front line to Europe, and they always wanted to have it. Yeah, it was very much in the part of the Stalin-Ribbentrop package, and they always regretted the loss. So these three countries, Moldova, Ukraine and Georgia, and they play a huge role in the Russian mythology, similar like Crimea. There is no doubt about it. Armenia and Azerbaijan much less, for religious reasons, for that they are similar like Albania in their view, and like Macedonia for Serbia, and they can, they are gone, let's trade, let's dominate them economically, strategically, militarily, but they are not where they have to really, where it's not so close to the heart of the greater Russian philosophy, if you want to use that term, like Georgia and Ukraine, and also Moldova to some extent is. In Moldova we had a victory now, that is very good, I congratulate everybody there, but we will spoil it. Michel is the person to spoil it, because at his kind of famous week in Patria, in this Batumi conference, now he said again, let's do first reforms and then we will make a new EAP conference. I'm maybe illusionary pro-European, pro-NATO person with a lot of fantasies, but I'm very realistic as well. The Eastern Partnership, as we have seen it for 10 years, was useful, but it has to go now. Belarus is lost. We can waltz around with Tsikhanovskaya for decades to come, and until Russia is not somehow in a weaker phase again, like in the 90s, and in an internal crisis, they will never let Belarus go. And no matter, there will be no early elections, there will be no they will do some fake kind of managed stuff when they feel they have the power to dominate the population and extort the result that they want. And that is exactly the situation. So we can do a lot of activities, and it's also good. I call for recognizing her as the full president, not as an opposition leader. I can give her the power and the resources to build a new exile government in Lithuania. It's the best strategy. Very good. Support her very much, or build it in Brussels. Very good. But to have an EAP summit and to keep the fiction of, or invite her to the EAP summit as the exile president, then an EAP summit I would be in favor. But nobody in Brussels will have the courage to do that. Yeah? And so EAP is a failed concept. It has to be finished. Yeah? It must be cut. Yeah? The EAP is a failed, ended concept. It had this purpose for the decade. Very good. Bravo, Carl Bildt and Mr. Sikorski. Very good idea from 2009 to 2019. But events have outdated it. And it's no good to go with kind of learned by heart speaking points of the past and institutions which no longer work and deliver to the future. So what needs to be done? The 5 countries where we have some, at least, Pashinyan was re-elected in Armenia. So he is at least relatively reasonable pro-European in his founding. Whenever he had to somehow dance with everybody in the last 2 years since his Armenian revolution. And Azerbaijan is a Turkish proxy ally in everything but the word. So Azerbaijan must be treated like Turkey, and Armenia must be treated like Serbia in a sense. Yeah? Good. All these countries must be in the Regional Cooperation Council based in Sarajevo, and in the Central European Free Trade Agreement. And in all this plethora of 10 other organizations I'm getting never tired to explain, the so-called regional reform mechanism created by Dr. Erhard Busek, initially as working groups from the Regional Cooperation Council. They are called the Energy Secretariat, Energy Union, Transport Union, the Regional Reform and Anti-Corruption Council, and then it's the Regional School of Public Administration in Danilovgrad in Montenegro, and then it's the Center for Excellence in Finance, and there is 15 other ones, and actually also a disaster preparedness center, and much for cooperation of the police and of the other mechanisms which are necessary for the states to reform, because these countries obviously need specific care and intensive support, so they must be in that mechanism. So we need only one instrument for Southeastern Europe, and it's one region, from the Southern Caucasus to the Balkans to Ukraine. And for Belarus, only Mrs. Tsikhanovskaya can participate in all that. She should be then, as the government of exile, also joining the Regional Cooperation Council. We don't need any Eastern Partnership program anymore, and that can be done and kept, for Central Asia. Fine, and for Afghanistan, because we should also do more there. Eastern Partnership is everything between Russia and China and over there, that's Eastern Partnership. For the Southern Caucasus, for the Ukraine. That's obviously not the Ukraine, I make no mistakes here. For Ukraine, for Moldova, it is the Regional Cooperation Council, Central and Free Trade Agreement, and they must join there. And all of them must also get, no, I make some small correction. I think all of them, no, if I think about it, the EU potential candidate status, I would actually give all of them. Tsikhanouskaya only for because that's very important to understand, the EU potential candidate status, very different to EU Eastern Partnership, is connected with the so-called instruments of pre-accession. And that's massive, significant and well-organized support to assist a country towards joining the European Union in an undetermined future. That means Bosnia and Kosovo are the only one who have it at the moment, because the others are candidate countries. And then there comes people like me, that's also my profession, you know, to provide technical assistance, and they get it. And then all the sectors of the state, all the sectors of the economy, of the social science, of the social system, everything is getting EU approximation support. It's not so massive monetary fund, but it's a lot of technical knowledge in order to bring the economic and social governance and the political structures of all sectors towards the EU level. And that is also what we should do even for Armenia and for Azerbaijan. And so the EU potential candidate. I'm actually outspoken against the EU candidacy of candidate status should be frozen in some way with Turkey. I don't see there's political kind of only maybe in 100 years for Turkey, and the same for Azerbaijan and also for Armenia. These are not countries which are in the immediate line to a realistic political accession in the political union of the EU. That's not what I'm saying here. Let's be very clear, I'm against the political membership of the Turkey in the political union EU, but economically, yes, strategically we are anyhow in NATO. So that's also the road for peace for all the countries, to be strategically aligned with us and also to be economically aligned. Political membership obviously depends if the countries really want to be part of the political system of the EU, of co-decision making, co-responsibility, common security and foreign policy. Here obviously it's very clear that Serbia is not. And Belarus obviously is out of the question. Russia is not. And also Armenia and Azerbaijan are not. And Turkey is not. So it's very clear. But Georgia is. And Moldova very much is. And Ukraine very much is. And Moldova we won now, we have to make that very fast. Georgia, we are under threat to lose it again after this having been a star of the reforms. So we have to very fast act. And also with Ukraine, the counter-revolution forces are there, obviously, the anti-Maidan forces. But, you know, we have at least, you know, some reform factors, and Ukraine is a big, you know, independent, strong entity as well. And so I think that's the better way for all of them. And there's big interest, obviously, in Ukraine to be stable. So I don't think we will see a similar counteraction like in Georgia, in Ukraine at the moment. But be sure that they prepared in Moscow. Because, as I have said already, they will never full-heartedly accept the sovereignty of Ukraine as a long-term reality. They will undermine it with whatever they can from the perspective of the Moscow elite I have described, and I know relatively well. And I know also the Serbian elite relatively well, because I was very active from the 1990s on, from 1991 in Moscow and in also in Belgrade in various activities. And I follow all these things very closely. And so this is what we should do. We should learn more about what they really say, what they really think, and then take it very seriously and make appropriate countermeasures. It's not up to them only to make countermeasures. We should be also a bit smarter. And concretely, what I say, what I call for. And recently I got then all this feedback after I made more of these videos, that also Soros has said we should use the euro and the customs union first after the 99 war and the liberation of Kosovo. You know, okay, I don't know this gentleman more than from the media. I'm not his agent, just to make it very clear. I'm a lifelong center-right-wing activist for flat tax and for all these things. But one thing is sure, I'm also a very pro-European person for my whole life, and I will always be, and pro-NATO and all these things. and that the EU is a customs and currency union as well. I mean, it's no surprise for anybody. So to recommend the euro should be something completely normal for the EU. I cannot understand that the EU doesn't recognize and recommend the euro for countries which it will join in the future. Obviously, you know, joining the euro zone is impossible now, but adopting the euro as currency and also the fiscal rules of the euro already early is much better than having a situation where you have fiscal crisis, devaluations, and a lot of mess in this sensitive area. It's in our interest. And that anybody, you know, that a customs union we are, I think I don't have to explain anybody who is listening for 25 minutes. It's very clear. So the future of the Balkans and of Eastern Europe in one as the Regional Cooperation Council must obviously very fast be in the euro and in the EU customs union. No matter who says it. Is it Soros? Is it me? It's simply a fact. We have the euro for a reason. It's the working tool or a firm fundament of our prosperity. It's one ship that lifts up all. And this is the way. And there shouldn't be countries left for devaluation. This should be for all countries a firm peg to the euro. It's much better because it's also obviously, you know, when you have the euro, it's an intrusion in the sovereignty. You cannot make any bullshit anymore with your currency. You cannot deprive your people of this kind of stability by printing a lot or making big deficits. You have to have certain fiscal discipline attached to it. And that's very good for Turkey. That's very good for Azerbaijan, for Ukraine, for everybody. So this whole region must be firmly pegged. I recommend only the euro for countries which have a firm European future, like for Ukraine, for Georgia, for Moldova, for Kosovo it's already, for Montenegro it's already. Also, I recommend the euro only for the countries which are, you know, politically aligned with us. For Serbia only in case of recognition of Kosovo. That's the price we can give to Serbia. But once we have euroized and put everybody in invited everybody, included everybody in the EU customs union, the economic prosperity, the reduction of the migration pressure, that's also a very important aspect. Because now, you know, in Albania and in many countries in Eastern Europe, everybody dreams of I go for the city, tell everybody I want to retire in Albania and I love it so much, and then everybody has a standard response. Okay, let's change. You can come here, I go there. That's basically the idea of most of the middle class and everybody in the youth, or even in the higher age, to go to Austria and to start a better life, or to Germany, obviously, because Germany is now more open, or to Sweden, or to anybody in the European Union where there is normal conditions of the rule of law and of economic opportunity. And that's obviously very attractive. And when we don't give the euro and the customs union very fast, obviously these trends will massively accelerate in the coming years. And it's just logically that that will be also difficult for the labor markets and for investors and for the economic development in the countries. But, you know, I'm more for openness, and let's anyhow be much more open on that one, because it will also result in an increase of the labor market rate for employment in the countries when there is less labor available, and so it has a positive effect on everybody, and it will be also good for our labor market productivity if more people come. So economically, more openness is absolutely very positive. So I'm actually now in a corner where I have to argue against open Balkans, and I have to explain it in a way, because I'm for Balkan Benelux, and that's the logic. The Balkan Benelux project, which I launched a decade ago almost, and I'm promoting since a long time, is that the pro-NATO countries work closer together here in the south of the Balkans. Obviously they can include Bosnia, but Bosnia is basically taken hostage via the Dayton powers to the Republic of Srpska, and Vucic is controlling it, and Vucic is controlled by Putin. So the real big partners and the real partners which should work together is the four countries of the Southern Balkans. They should, inside this Regional Cooperation Council, form a much deeper form of cooperation where they really can do a lot of data exchange, a lot of joint administration of the customs system, and Kosovo, and obviously Kosovo included, is in a way already part of our defense union, because we have the security guarantee anyhow for Kosovo. So if Serbia ever attacks, it will be NATO defending Kosovo. The same, by the way, for Bosnia. But Bosnia is, of course, via this Republika Srpska more controlled via Vucic, and which luckily we don't have the same situation in Kosovo. So these four countries must be very deeper coordinated, and Regional Cooperation Council for everybody but Belarus to be, of course, closer with the European Union and to train to adopt European standards. End-to-end Eastern Partnership, or if we want to continue, to bring it towards Central Asia, basically the same, and also to Afghanistan. But this is the better strategy, and this is very logical. A closer, deeper cooperation in a very intensified form in the southern Balkans, Balkan Benelux, while this should be in no way, also I got that comment, I would like to address it. This should be in no way a kind of alternative to EU integration. No, no. The NATO countries and the ones who are aligned with the foreign policy and who are in the euro, that means Montenegro, and hopefully also, if it adopts the euro, Albania and Macedonia, should be very much fast in the political union, because politically, and that is very important to understand, politically they are fully with us. In Montenegro, the majority is pro-Western, very clear. Now the government, maybe it has a minority which has some other thinking, but also they want to join the European Union, and they are not going, they are not going against our common foreign policy in that sense, yeah? And they don't have also the majority for that. Yeah? So here we have Montenegro, we have Albania, which is absolutely a wide national consensus, 95%, everybody pro-Western. We have also Macedonia, where there is maybe a lesser pro-Western consent, but there is a NATO membership and there is compliance with you. No, not fully actually. That is something also to be improved, I think. But I have to update myself. Yeah? So these are the three countries. They can join in 2024 already. So that's very good. But that doesn't concern they should also be in the Regional Cooperation Council, like Croatia is as well, and like other countries from the regions are, like Romania, like Bulgaria, like Greece. Yeah? So the Regional Cooperation Council should be open for all countries from Southeastern Europe, including the Caucasus, including Ukraine, obviously, Greece. This is one region here. They have a lot of interest to learn and to cooperate together, based in Sarajevo. Very good. But Balkan Benelux can still be, the three countries work very closely in this Benelux-style cooperation, like they do it in the Netherlands or in the Nordic countries, in the Balkan countries, with Kosovo, obviously, and help Kosovo to reach the NATO standards and the EU standards, to be also then together, once Serbia turns to the west, in the European Union, together with Serbia and together with Bosnia. And I'm very much in favor of Bosnia and Serbia as well. Then they are already in RCC. They can also then join the European Union if they are politically aligned with our principles and our common foreign policy. You see, Orban is pushing very much for Serbia alone to join. Yeah? He doesn't care so much for the other countries, but he made this big campaign for Serbia to join. Why? It's very logical, because he, after 2014, joined the Russian world mentally wise and financially, and now he promotes a second country inside the European Union, which is mentally and politically not aligned with us, like Hungary, unfortunately, is not aligned with us. And Serbia would be a good fit to be two of them, to tango in Central Europe against America, against Germany, against the West, inside the EU. That would be. But that will never happen. We are not fools, yeah, to allow that. Yeah? And so that is absolutely impossible. And so ultimately, what I say, three members from the south in, they can align very fast. They have technically done most of the things. Obviously, the implementation level in Albania is below Montenegro and Macedonia. There is also no doubt, because we have for a decade left everybody a little bit alone. Yeah? I tried my best, but I'm just not important. Yeah? In Brussels, after 2013 with Croatia, a historic mistake that Albania was not allowed in the EU together with Croatia. That would have changed the whole Balkan to the positive and would have been much better decade, but it was only Croatia with German and Austrian help. There was no consensus to allow Albania in the EU as well in 2013. And as you see with Croatia, it has already magnificently developed. Today is the 5th of August. It's a very important day also for Croatia, let me add this, because it's a wonderful example how the Serbian and Russian counter-narrative about the events in the 90s leading to kind of weaken our unity, because very few have congratulated Croatia for the unity and victory day today when they have liberated their territory with the help of the American forces and a lot of indirect German and Austrian support, as much, not militarily, but in many other aspects. And it was very good that they have liberated. And it was not ethnic genocide, as the Serbian Ministry of Foreign Affairs tries to tell the world now. Because their narrative in Serbia is, they have committed no genocide in Srebrenica, but the Croatians have committed the biggest ethnic cleansing in the history of Europe in that year 95. Yeah. The reality is completely different, but Michel and Kurz, they don't know history very well, and they don't know even the facts of our recent history very well. And now they basically are shying away to be attacked to defend a member state of NATO and EU, Croatia, which did everything with Western backing at that moment, because it was the senior military advisors who were involved and who gave the clearing, because Croatia, after the Washington Agreement, was not an independent actor in itself. Yeah? Croatia, by the way, let me make the statement, did a lot of crimes against Bosnians in '93, and this should be brought to justice, to be very clear. There was terrible crimes committed by Croatians and Croatian militias against Bosnians in '93. But from the Washington Agreement onward, they were an American proxy in the Balkans, and they were supported and led, and they knew exactly that everything they do wrong will have major political consequences. Yeah? There's this wonderful video about the whole detailed, I don't have to repeat it online, I shared it on my Twitter account today. But in short version, what happened? There was this July major offensive of Serbia to create facts and to commit genocide in eastern Bosnia in Srebrenica, and that created in a way a military opening for the Croatians for a counter-offensive, because they had their forces in the north in Bihać and in the east in Srebrenica to kill a lot of people. And then in the central part, in the southern part in Herzegovina, they had not a lot of forces. And then the Croatians and the Bosnians together made this big march to encircle the so-called Krajina, this Croatian Serbian minority region at that time. And then they were militarily encircled. And then it was the order by the Serbian state high command to evacuate as well the civilians, because they were no longer able to defend them, and they were not under threat of any kind of genocide, to make it very clear, because that really was under American tutelage already. So, and this whole myth of any kind of potential genocide against the Serbs in '95, yeah, that is a myth. Yeah? That's the Serbian counter-narrative, which now they spread every single day. This was an ordered exodus by the Serbian authority in the Operation Oluja. And that's a fact you can see very much online on these videos, and you can read the history. And so it's this kind of effort which they make systematically, because they care very much to clean their name from the genocide, and they care very much, obviously, to somehow dominate Serbian politics, Bosnian politics to this day. And also they care very much, their real counter kind of balance in this region is obviously Croatia, and they badmouth Croatia every single day, and it results in the fact that this 5th of August is somehow not mentioned in the Twitter accounts of Ursula von der Leyen and Michel, because it's too difficult for them to touch, yeah? Because Belgrade could be angry, and this is contentious, and then let's better not talk about it. And the rollback starts now, basically since Putin's third term is in very full swing. The rollback has started with Putin's election, but intensified it's of course in the third term since 2012, and in the period after, when he came back after his prime ministership, and he came back, and then also the turnaround in Serbia, and in this lost decade, which we face unfortunately, because we have this the 2010s, where in the follow-up of the financial crisis, very complicated. And let's not forget, there is also a very important logic behind it, because in the communist ideology, and still of course there are no communists anymore there fully, but they are now claiming to be capitalists, which they certainly are not. but they are just, kind of autocrats who like money, and they also, in the mentalities, they still think in this narrative what they were told in the high schools when they were young, in the universities, in the KGB schools, in the UTPA schools, in the political academies of their parties, or wherever they learned their things. They were learned this communist kind of thinking. The narrative goes like that. The West is not stable, it has economic crises, and then it breaks down, and that's the opportunity. This is the same logic of the 29 crisis, when Stalin then started all his measures to mobilize the state fully for war, because he saw the West is ended, and so now it's time for him and the Soviet Union. The same logic is the 2008 financial crisis. We were a bit paralyzed, and we have recovered actually quite fine, but we were paralyzed, and then obviously that was the signal, okay, now let's get going. They are down, the West is ended, China will rise, we rise with them, and let's be active and let's roll back. In the weakness phase, then the West has exploited us and has recognized all these non-entities like Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova in the case of Russia, and also then Bosnia, Montenegro and Kosovo, which in the Serbian thinking is always the creation of the West. And so this must be rolled back in everything but the name, and so that's basically the ongoing process. And so we are like not understanding that. It is my thinking. It's my perception of what our European politics is doing. And so we are then not able to build up a kind of working structure and a strategy against such a rollback. And even because we have this kind of golden opportunities of Russian energy, and we have this kind of great investment opportunities in a well-working, administratively organized and under control of Vucic, relatively well-performing economic model of Serbia. And then this is a bit more attractive to fly to Belgrade and to Moscow than to sit in Pristina, Podgorica and learn the history of all these other places. Now the music starts at Dura's evening, so I will probably come to an end, and I have talked 42 minutes. But I hope I was clear, because it's really important to understand our opponents as well, because if we just don't care or just care for their history and their narrative, we lose obviously the kind of ideological denomination struggle, the narrative idea about what really happened even on the European continent 25 years ago, and then it's turned the table against us, and then our allies like Croatia, Ukraine are seen as the fascists, the terrible people, they made everything wrong, and then Russia and Serbia are the clean people, and their genocides are not so serious. And so it works like that, yeah. And so because our people really don't know exactly what to say, and then they say, oh yes, okay, it's all complicated, let's not talk about it. And so because of the lack of education and knowledge, we unfortunately face this situation where the rollback is ongoing, where we have this Open Balkan event, where we have the rollback in Georgia, and where we lose the opportunity of European Moldova, European Ukraine, and it's a bit frustrating for me on that one. Yeah, we do then a lot of nice events for Mrs. Tikhanovskaya from Washington to Brussels, but it's with no effect. Yeah. And so then we somehow waste energy, because for the really important things, to help our friends more and to bring them in the EU in the terms of Albania, Montenegro and Albania, or to help them with the euro in case of Ukraine, or to give them the EU potential candidate state, or also NATO membership, like we have given also to Western Germany. I want to remember everybody that this was the start of the victory in the Cold War, the Western German integration into NATO in '55. And for Ukraine, we are not ready to get free Ukraine into it. And then, of course, not ready for the same for Georgia and not for Moldova. So we will probably not achieve a lot in the coming decade. And we are a little bit, like, just, helpless. And this is not, I would quote Mrs. Clinton on that one, this is not an organizing principle for a great power. She said famously when Obama said, let's do no harm, and she's equipped like that. Yeah? And when you say you have now the start of a geostrategic commission for 2 years, we have Michel, who was put by Emmanuel Macron into power against, we could have had also the Iron Lady from Lithuania, Mrs. Grybauskaitė, or Klaus Ioannis from Romania, who would obviously have known Eastern European history much better. And the task of a EU president is obviously enlargement and the knowledge of the periphery and the conflict points. Yeah? It's not the daily management of everything or to convene a council meeting. Yeah? No, this is the task of a EU Commission, Council President. And also when you say geostrategic and we fail in our periphery, how seriously can take the Chinese a European Union which when Serbia doesn't take us serious. Yeah? And when they are now the biggest investor in Ukraine because we fail and we don't invest. Yeah? And so on and so on. And so many examples where China very clearly always sees the reality and is very pragmatic. Yeah? They obviously also clearly communist, and I'm not soft on China, don't get me wrong. But they're very pragmatic people. They want to make business, investment and results. Yeah? And when we don't do results, they do the results. Yeah? And if we fail our responsibility from Ukraine to the Balkans, and then Serbia makes all this with vaccines and other things, then of course the Chinese say, okay, good, yeah. Maybe we have to do more because opportunity is there and the EU is not so interested. So they exploit our weaknesses, and that's of course also not really cool. And that's I wanted to say about the Geostrategic Commission 2019. That was the big title, that we take a global leadership role and we are very important. Yeah. So, of course, when we want to run Greenpeace, it's good, and the climate is very important, no doubt, yeah, and to invest in clean world is good. But when we have at the same time total environmental disaster in the Balkans and in Ukraine left over from the Soviet Union and Yugoslavia, which we don't clean up because we don't integrate the countries, but we bring already very clean Austria and very clean Germany. The last time I was there, it was very clean. So we bring them to a super clean level. That's of course good, And we do energy transition in the government declaration. We cut more the time for energy transition. So that's really good, for the energy and for clean air. I also want to have everything clean, and also it's good to cut the carbon import from Russia. But at the same time, if it's actually leading to more carbon import from Russia and more nuclear dependency on Russian nuclear fuel, then I'm absolutely opposed, to be very clear. Anyhow, but a Geostrategic Commission, the whole thing is not if we don't have the situation in the East really managed well. And I made very concrete proposals here from Balkan Benelux, from an enlarged regional cooperation council, from an upgrade towards EU potential candidate countries for the pro-European ERP countries, to the euro as a currency and the customs union extended, and obviously to have currency back. That's, I think, the reasonable way to do it. And it was a long video now, almost 1 hour, but I think I have explained all the things strategically in the last, in the current crisis we have in this 12 complicated countries, which I want to close now and say very clearly, it's the only way for really having massive improvement, fast, is inside the European Union. We had the courage for Romania, for Bulgaria in 2007. It was complicated and expensive, but it worked very well. They are now very developed countries, while not perfect, but much better than they ever were in the whole history. And so that's very good. The same we have to do for Albania, for Macedonia, and for Montenegro, and that will be very good as well. And in the hindsight, it will be a major success. And then also to extend NATO, and to hammer down all the neutrals that they really join as well. In the EU, nobody can be neutral, and it should be everybody in NATO to be aligned with our American partners and to contain Russia and Serbia together. And once Serbia changes sides, they can also join the European Union, obviously, and NATO and the Euro once they have recognized Kosovo. And with Russia, we will wait them out until there is a post-Putin time, and we will settle things with Russia then, in a positive way, hopefully with a kind of a pro-Western government, which we had the opportunities in the 90s. But contrary to what some people think, Putin was never part of that. He was always the nomenclatura person. He was always the KGB man. And the Nemtsov leadership we never supported enough, and all these people, they then were ultimately, he was slaughtered by Putin's thugs in Moscow 5 years ago in 2015. Yeah, so there will be a time again for a pro-European, pro-Western Russia. It will take maybe 15 years, maybe 20 years, it will come. But if we manage now to have Ukraine in the EU and also the Balkans and also to settle the things I have outlined now in this video very positively, because once Russia will really be in this next kind of transformation like in 1991, and we have already Ukraine in NATO and in the EU, then there will be massive kind of possibilities to influence also the Russian transformation in the 2040s or 50s to come. And that's a much better strategy than what we do now, to be paralyzed and to let basically Russia and Serbia roll back the success of the last 20 years. And we are like uninformed and incompetently led by people who really don't know this most important region. Because why it's most important maybe to also add that all the wars of the last 100 years in Europe, 150 years, yeah, like from the Great Eastern Crisis onwards, were fought for this so-called periphery, in many ways the region between Russia and Germany. This was the fighting ground, the battleground, and this was the complicated area which led to the First and the Second World War, to the Cold War, and to this permanent conflict. And if you don't know that, and if you don't care, if you think it's a headache, or you don't want to listen to it, or you somehow want to keep it for the future, you make a big mistake, and it is very dangerous. And that's we shouldn't do, and we should be very active. And I made very clear how to do that. I said it's very important, and I hope that now there will be also maybe somebody listening for my 1 hour video on that one here from Durres, still a bit handicapped. But now I think the sun is setting. I will say now ultimately for today, goodbye. Thanks a lot for listening. More from Pax Europiana. I will be back soon in Austria, and then also back on my podcasting, and also to update you further on developments from Albania to Georgia, and for peace in Europe in the coming years. Thanks for the many new likes. I used now this opportunity to make a longer video, also to welcome all my new viewers. I have now reached close to 300. Soon I will cross this. It's not a massive audience, I know, but I hope that my message will get across. I will also continue from time to time to make a video in Albanian, because a lot of my viewers I see are from Albania and from Kosovo, and that's very much appreciated. And I will also continue to be very active on Twitter, and follow my account please, where I tell my perspective of the European future with our American friends. As I always close, thanks for keeping us safe, the guys in the 6th Navy over there. We owe you much, and we will always be with you. Now help us please get all the NATO members into the EU. Here from Albania, I call for American help for Albania to be EU member, Montenegro to be EU member, and North Macedonia to be EU member. That's, I think, the most important priority, that we have really major progress. And the wake-up call was this open Balkans. I hope that in America people understood that we cannot leave the Balkans to Serbia, we cannot leave Ukraine and Georgia to Russia. And if we are not active, then definitely our opponents and our enemies will win. And okay, they won't win, yeah, but they will be creating much more problems, because they will feel emboldened, and that's much more complicated. Yeah, if we create clarity, we should have done all these things I say already 5 years ago, and we wouldn't be in the mess of today. Anyhow, last view, sunset, beautiful. Thanks a lot, and more tomorrow. Keep you posted. Thanks a lot for listening. Bye from Pax Europiana. Thanks for your subscription. Thank you. Bye.